Hey everyone, welcome to Hands on Books. If this is your first time here, the idea behind the show is to do something fun and creative with my favorite hobby, which is book collecting. So I have a pile here of mostly used, unopened books that we pick from at random to see what we get. Maybe you'll find your next book or be introduced to a new topic, but the goal here is to share the experience of the books themselves. If this is something you enjoy, feel free to like the video, subscribe to receive notifications, and share with your friends. Let's get started. Okay, let's see what we get. Thank you. Aha! Another Jack Vance book. The Brave Free Men, Book 2 of the Battle of Survival in the World of Durdane by Jack Vance. This is to complete one of the trilogies that I haven't started yet by Vance. And let's see how much the paint this is going to tear off. So far, not too bad. Okay, that wasn't too bad. At least it didn't rip off too much of the spine. Okay, so this is one of the Durdane trilogy, which I have no idea what it's about, but it's one of the few Jack Vance series that I haven't even begun to read yet at all. So let's check out the back. The Faceless Man was a prisoner in his own palace, and his power over the people of Durdane was in the hands of another, the hands of Gastel Etswain, a youth whose thirst for vengeance against the dreaded Roguskoi would slacken only in oceans of their blood. But to destroy the Roguskoi, Gastel would have to unite a world that survived by its separateness. To do this was more than dangerous, but Gastel had little choice. He would return to the people control of their lives and send them to fight to their death. So Vance, I know we've covered him before, but he's one of my favorite science fiction authors, and he's got this really wonderful, polite style that I love, and it usually, he uses it to describe things that are not so polite, and it sort of masks whatever horrifying thing that he's thought up. And it's really interesting because you have to sort of peek through the language and figure out what he's actually describing, because he is too polite to say some things, but he's not too polite to write about them and imply them. So I thought I had all of these books, the Durdane books, but this is the third one, and this is the same book, but it was released under two different titles. So once I realized that, I went ahead and bought this one, which is the middle one. So now that I've got the complete series, I think I'll read it in order. But let's just go ahead and concentrate on this second book for now. The Roguskoi. They were almost men, but they were completely inhuman, and their origin was a mystery. They lived in the hills and preyed on the people of Shant, raiding the farms and villages for food, liquor, and women. They had taken and killed the mother and sister of Gastel Etswain, and he wanted revenge. Nothing could stand in his way. There was nothing he would not do, no action from which he would shrink, not even the deposition of the Anome. And a lot of Vance stories are pretty straightforward, like this one is just a straightforward revenge story, supposedly, but the way that the settings in which the stories take place are always just incredible and detailed and filled with unique peoples that are really well fleshed out and interesting. So this one is from... released in 72, and this is the first printing in 73. Let's see if we can figure out who the artist is. The old advertisements in the back. Don't want to read the final page. Chapter 1. In a chamber high under the dormers of Fontenay's inn, Etswain stirred on his couch. He had slept but little. Presently he arose and went to the window where the stars had paled on the violet dawn. The far slopes of the Ushkadel showed only the occasional green sparkle of a street lamp. The aesthete palaces were dark. In one of these palaces, thought Etswain, the faceless man had slept no better than himself, which is, I guess, a reference to this first book somehow. He turned away from the window and went to the washstand. A carbon fume mirror gave back his image, a face altered both by the gloom of dawn and the umbral quality of the mirror. Etswain peered close. This unreal, somewhat menacing person might well be himself most truly. The face sardonic, drooping of mouth, hollow of cheek, the skin sallow with a leaden sheen, the eyes dark holes punctuated by a pair of glittering reflections. He thought, here stands Gastel Etswain, first chillite pure boy, then pink-black azure deep greener, now a man of enormous power. He spoke to the image. Today is a day of important events. Gastel Etswain must not allow himself to be killed. The image gave back no reassurance. He dressed and went down to the street. At a booth on the riverbank he ate fried fish and bread and considered his prospects for the day. In broad essence, the job was simple. He must go to Surshan Palace and there compel Sajarano, the Anome of Shant, to do his bidding. If Sajarano demurred, Etswain need merely press a button to explode his head, for now Sajarano wore a torque and Etswain did not. It was work of stark and brutal simplicity. Unless Sajarano divined his solitary condition, his lack of ally or confederate, in which case Etswain's situation became precarious. With his breakfast finished, there was nothing to deter him. He set forth up Gallius Avenue. Sajarano, he reflected, would desperately be seeking to escape from his intolerable predicament. Etswain asked himself, what, in Sajarano's place, would be his own response? Flight? Etswain stopped short. Here was a contingency he had not considered. From his pouch he brought the pulse emitter, once Sajarano's basic tool of law enforcement. Etswain's encoded the colors of Sajarano's torque. The yellow button would now, if necessary, detonate the torque, thereby removing Sajarano's head. Etswain pushed the red seek button. The box hummed, the sound fluctuating with change of direction. At maximum, the box pointed towards Surshan Palace. Etswain proceeded, more thoughtful than ever. Sajarano had not taken to flight. He might have evolved a strategy more active. Gallius Avenue terminated at the Marmione Plaza, where a fountain of milk-white water played over artifacts of purple glass. The Koroniki steps opposite, constructed by King Caspar Pandemon, rose toward the terraces of the Ushkadel. At the middle way, Etswain left the steps and proceeded eastward, around the sweep of the Ushkadel. The prismatic palace Gialinen rose above him. Here lived Jurgen, the faceless man's benevolence. Among a dozen other mysteries, this. Why had Sajarano selected so conspicuously beautiful a girl for his deputy? The mystery, in this case, might be more apparent than real. So Etswain speculated. The Anome, like any man, could suffer the pangs of love. Jurgen of Gialinen, perhaps, had reacted coolly to the attentions of Sajarano, who was neither handsome, dashing, nor distinguished. Perhaps she wondered when the faceless man had ordered her into his service and commanded her to take no lovers. In due course, the faceless man might have ordered her to look kindly upon Sajarano. So Etswain conjectured. He came to the palace Surshan, neither more nor less splendid than any of the others. Etswain halted to review all circumstances. The next half-hour would determine the future of Shant. Each minute carried more weight than all the days of a normal man's life. He looked up and down the facade of Surshan Palace. Columns of crystal, more lucid and transparent than air itself, fractured the beams of the triple suns. The violet and green domes beyond sheltered chambers where 60 Surshan generations had lived, celebrated their festivals, and died. Etswain trudged forward. He crossed the loggia, approached the portico, and here he paused. 6 doors of inch-thick glass, each 15 feet high, barred his way. No light or movement appeared within. Etswain hesitated, uncertain how to proceed. He began to feel foolish, hence angry. He rapped on the glass. His bare knuckles made little noise. He pounded with his fist. He saw movement within. A moment later, a man came around the side of the place. It was Sajarano himself. "These are ceremonial doors," said Sajarano in a mild voice. "We seldom open them. Would you come this way?" In glum silence, Etswain followed Sajarano to a side entrance. Sajarano motioned him within. Etswain halted and searched Sajarano's face, to which Sajarano returned a faint smile, as if he found Etswain's wariness amusing. With his hand on the yellow button, Etswain entered the palace. "I have been expecting you," said Sajarano. "Have you breakfasted? Perhaps you'll take a cup of tea. Shall we go up to the morning room?" He led the way to a sunny chamber with a floor of green and white jade tiles. The wall to the left was shrouded in dark green vines. The wall to the right was clear white alabaster. Sajarano motioned Etswain to a wicker chair beside a wicker table. Then at his sideboard served himself a few morsels of food and poured tea into a pair of silverwood cups. Etswain carefully seated himself. Sajarano took the chair opposite, his back to the ceiling-high windows. Etswain studied him with somber calculation, and Sajarano once again gave back his faint smile. Sajarano was not an imposing man physically. His features were small. Under a broad, high forehead, his nose and mouth seemed almost immature. His chin was a nubbin. The Anome of popular conception was vastly different from this mild, reasonable man. I really like the way Vance always describes settings and people. He mixes in things that we're familiar with things that we're not. So we have like jade, alabaster, wicker, and silverwood. And silverwood is presumably something that doesn't exist in our world, at least I've never heard of it, but means something in this. So I think I'm going to stop here. I couldn't find the artist. It's cool art. Originally 95 cents. So I think maybe to get a taste of how this series actually starts, instead of just dumping into the middle of the second book, I'll read the first few pages of The Faceless Man. But first, make sure it smells okay. I love the way these old paperbacks smell. I think now I have all from the same line of publication. No, wait, no. This is Ace. These are Dell. Anyway. Let's read how the whole series first starts. This is The Faceless Man. In the land of Shant, each man knows his place, for he is marked for it from birth. And when he approaches manhood, a torque is placed about his neck. Its color defines his role in society. The explosive charge placed within it ensures that he will accept that role. Since that day long ago, when the last rebellious citizen had received his collar, Shant had known perfect peace. But peace at a price too high to pay. At last a lone youth dares to challenge the unchallengeable, to defy the Anome. But first he must find him, and though all men obey his orders, no man knows his identity. He is the Faceless Man. The Faceless Man. No one has ever seen him, but everyone knows him. The people of Chant swear by his name and live in terror of him. To break canton law is to defy the Faceless Man. To leave the canton itself is to defy the Faceless Man. To refuse to wear the torque that binds you to him is to defy the Faceless Man. Gastel Etswain has done all three, and to defy the Faceless Man is death. It's originally published as the Anome, or Anome. This one was originally from 71. This paperback's from 78. Cover art by Dave Meltzer. Chapter 1. At the age of 9, Mur heard a man in his mother's rest cottage call out a jocular curse in the name of the Faceless Man. Later, after the man had gone his way, Mur put a question to his mother. "Is the Faceless Man real?" "He is real indeed," replied Ithra. Mur considered the matter for a period, then asked, "How does he eat or smell or talk?" Ithra, in her calm voice, replied, "I suppose one way or another he manages." "It would be interesting to watch," said Mur. "No doubt. Have you ever seen him?" Ithra shook her head. "The Faceless Man never troubles the Chillites. So you need not concern yourself for the Faceless Man," she added as a musing afterthought. "For better or worse, such is the case." Mur, a child thin and somber, knit the black brows that had come as a legacy from his unknown blood father. Why should such a case be better or worse? "What a vexatious child you are," declared Ithra without heat. Her lips twitched, perhaps a twinge of chsine. Then the footnote here. Chsine. 1. Conditioned recoil from a forbidden thought. 2. Blindness or obliviousness to the actuality of unfamiliar, forbidden, or unorthodox circumstances. "But," she said, "if a person breaks Chillite law, the ecclesiarchs punish him. If he runs away, the Faceless Man takes his head." Ithra's hand went to her torque, a mannerism common to all the folk of Chant. "If you obey Chillite law, you need never fear the loss of your head. This is the better. In such a case, however, you are a Chillite, and this is the worse." Mur said no more. The remarks were unsettling. Were his soul father to hear, Ithra would incur at least a reprimand. She might be transferred to the tannery, and Mur's world would be shattered. The time left him on mother's milk, to use the Chillite idiom, was short enough in any event, 3 or 4 years. A wayfarer entered the cottage. Ithra put a garland of flowers around her brow and poured a goblet of wine. Mur went to sit in the shade of the great rhododendrons across the way. To some such encounter he owed his existence, so he was aware, an original guilt that he must expiate when he became a Chillite pure boy. The whole process taxed his mind. Ithra had borne 4 children. Delamber, a girl of 16, already maintained a cottage at the west end of the way. The second child, Blink, 3 years older than Mur, had already put on the white robe of a pure boy and had assumed the name Chalris Gargamet, combining the virtues of Chalris, the Chillite ascetic who had lived and died in the branches of the Holy Oak 4 miles up Murk Valley, and Bastin Gargamet, the master tanner who, while fuming Aholf hides, and then we have a footnote, Aholf, a half-intelligent biped autochthonous to Durdane, ranging wild in the backlands and wildernesses, on occasion tamed, bred, and crossbred for a variety of uses, from unskilled labor and portage to house pets. When sick, the Aholf exudes a detestable odor that excites even itself to complaint. And Bastin Gargamet, the master tanner who, while fuming Aholf hides, had discovered the sacramental qualities of Galga. Footnote, Galga, dried leaves of the easel bush, pulverized, bound with easel gum and Aholf blood, an important adjunct to the spasmic Chillite worship of Galexis. The 4th child, born 2 years after Mur, had been adjudged defective and drowned in the tannery sump, with prejudice towards Ithra, sexual eccentricity being held the cause of fetal defects. Mur sat under the rhododendrons, scratching patterns in the white dust and appraising those who passed. A mercantilist driving a pacer trap rented at the Balloon Way station in Canton Seamus. Then 3 young vagabonds, agricultural workers by the green-brown verticals of their torque badges. Mur stirred himself. His plot of fiber trees wanted bending. If the bobbins were allowed to run slack, the thread became lumpy and coarse. A steam-powered dray came past, loaded with fine long blackwood timbers. Mur, forgetting fiber trees, gave chase and hung dangling from the end timber all the way to Merk Bridge, where he dropped onto the road and watched the dray rumble along the far wild road to the east. For a period he dropped pebbles into the Merk. Just above the bridge turned a water wheel to grind galls, alum, dye-stone, all manner of herbs, roots, and chemicals for the tannery. So there's a lot of world building packed into 7 pages, and this is a perfect example of Vance's polite understatement, because if we're reading between the lines, his mother is a prostitute. But Vance will never say that outright. So you can tell that the hints are: heard a man in his mother's rest cottage call out a jocular curse, and then we know that he doesn't know his blood father. And when another guest, a wayfarer, entered the cottage, Ithra put a garland of flowers around her brow and poured a goblet of wine. Mur idled back along Rhododendron Way and found the traveler departed. Another customer had finished. Ithra set out bread and soup for his lunch. As Mur ate, he asked the question that all morning had been tugging at a corner of his mind. Shalrus resembles his soul father, but I do not. Isn't this strange? Ithra paused for knowledge to well up into her mind. A wonderful, elemental process, like the flowering of trees or juice oozing from bruised fruit. Neither you or Chalrus have blood connection with Grand Male Osso or any other Chilite. They have no knowledge of real women. Chalrus's father I do not know. Your blood father was a wanderer, a music maker, one of those who travel alone. I was sorry when he went his way. All right, I just wanted to do pricing and quality for this one. But before I do, I just wanted to show this cool art for this version of the first book of the Durdane series. It's got these interesting like blimps or dirigibles or airships, and they're connected to these tracks. And I've always wanted to start this one just because of this cover, and Vance always plays with interesting ways to get around his worlds, and I've never heard of anything like this in any other book, so I'm excited to finally get to start this series. Touching on pricing and quality, I'm totally fine with this quality. It's, 50 years old? From 1973, so exactly 50 years old. No underlining, and since I got this through Thrift Books, they do this cool thing where if you buy not even that many books, like 4 or 5 books, then you'll get reading rewards credit, and you get to get like a $10 book for free. So this book was $6, but I got it for just what it cost to ship, which was just $1.60. So I'm always really happy to get a book like this for $1. Okay, so that's gonna do it for this episode. Little taste of a untouched, for me at least, Jack Vance series. I'm always excited to finally step out on that like journey of trying to get into another one of his stories, because they're all like so completely different. And anyway, that's going to do it for the Durdane trilogy. We've got The Faceless Man first published as the Anome or Anome, and then we have Free Brave Men and the Asutra. Until next time, thanks for checking out the channel, and happy reading!